Welcome. We are here with Simon Terry, who we met each other through Change Agents Worldwide, which is an organization that everyone who's listening to the podcast should definitely check out. It's because it's people who want to make a difference in the world of work, and that's all we talk about. And Simon Terry is leading up the charge right now, and you've been doing that for how long, Simon?
Well, I've been involved in Change Agents Worldwide now for 18 months and really taken on a more leadership role over the
Yeah.
last 2 months. So very excited to be helping that community grow and develop.
Yeah, you're doing a great job with it. I love it. Tell everyone what you do for, I'll say, your real work, although that is part of real work as well. What do you do for real work?
Okay, well, I like to help organizations and individuals with three things. I believe that the future of work critically depends upon the way we collaborate, the way we approach leadership, and the way we learn. And I think those things are what really come together to create fantastic new customer experiences, to support innovation, and to enable organizations to realize their potential. And so those are really the key focuses for me, that collaboration, learning, and leadership, and how they play together, because the best organizations are using those three things to outperform.
Good. I just did an interview with Bart Schuda. Do you know him? Do you know Bart? Bart is the director of digital learning for Saint Gobain in France, and he that's a, he's focused on that learning, and he has some fabulous insights. I should get you two together and have you guys talk. I think you'd enjoy that. Now tell me what. So you used to work at NAB, National Australian Bank, yeah, and you switched from that to being out on your own, correct? So why what's behind that? What is your why? Why are you doing what you're doing now compared to what you were doing?
Yeah, look, I really enjoyed working for National Australia Bank, and I had some fantastic opportunities there. And one of the things I was doing as I was sort of working in those roles was asking myself, what is it that drives me to do the work I do? What are the commonalities in the things I'm doing? And over time, I spent more and more time, helping drive change, helping people with their potential, helping to develop and make the organization work in what I thought were better ways. And when I was coming to this point of leaving, this thing struck me one day that really what I enjoy doing is helping work become more human. That,
Hmm.
the frustrations of bureaucracy, the challenge of when you're not connecting with other individuals, the silos, all the things that we kind of have come to love to hate about organizations are examples of how work can be dehumanizing. Whereas I've seen that things like collaboration and learning and great leadership really bring out the human side of organizations, enable people to leverage the benefits of being more human. So that's really the why for me, is that I work today on ensuring everything I do drives to that purpose, whether it's being a part of Change Agents Worldwide, whether it's working with clients, whether it's doing work speaking and promoting that agenda. All of that activity goes to being on purpose as much as I can possibly be, and also having an impact in the world where I'm lifting up my clients' capabilities around those things, where I'm inspiring other people to take on that challenge of making work more human.
That's great. So work more human, which means that it's more. What's the opposite of human to you?
For me, it's the opposite is mechanical. So
Okay.
it's kind of if we have a whole bunch of machine metaphors, which is so ingrained in the way we think about management, the way we think about work, that sometimes we don't even see them anymore. Performance and efficiency and output and inputs, and we use this machine language, and you could blame it all on um, Frederick Winslow Taylor and Henry
Right.
Ford, but it's bigger than that, right? We've
Right.
just borrowed that kind of machine mentality, and it influences a lot of the traditional ways management views the world. Whereas I think that the nature of the digital technologies we've got presents us with a choice. They either drive that machine metaphor to its absurd conclusion, and we actually take humans out of the process entirely and we let AI and robots rule the world, right?
Sure.
Or we use a new platform created by digital technologies to think differently about what we're here for, what work means, what impact we want to have. And for me, we're faced with that choice. We either choose to be more human, and we control that choice. There's a lot of people throwing their arms up going, jobs are disappearing because of robotics and digital future. Oh, it's the end of the world. The perfect answer to that is human creativity. Human potential will find things for us to do that are worthy of our talents. So if we focus on that human aspect, on the creative and collaborative potential of human beings, at the end of the day, the robots only exist because some clever human created them. That's the kind of opportunity that I think we need to focus on. And that's where I want to break that machine metaphor. I want to break out of that model that we're just a unit of production.
So as you're saying this, because I do a number of videos, I produce videos, I'm kind of getting this scene in my head, and tell me if I'm close to what you're thinking as well. I see employees kind of in their boxes, and then when a machine comes and takes it over, they just move to another box, and it just and it may be going up and it may be getting better, and that's good. But it kind of, what you're saying is breaking that box open and saying, show us what you can do, and they take off instead of just going from one box to the next. The potential, you're realizing the potential instead of almost, would you say that right now we're trying to, with however you want to term this, modern management, the way we're managing our companies, or way we're approaching it at least, we're putting a cap on employees and saying, oh, stop there, stop thinking, stop being creative, and we need to blow that up? Is that kind of what you're saying?
Yeah, so I think your box metaphor is exactly where I'm going. I mean, I've seen so many incredibly talented people fulfilling their job specification and saying, gee, I wish I could do more. And you're like, you can, right?
Right.
The job specification is not a glass wall around your potential. It's just an indication that you must cover that space. Go out. This is what change agents is all about. People who don't accept that boundary is not permeable, that they got to do that. That's what the job's for, but go do everything else that you see. If something outside your role needs to be changed, go change it. And I think that the way I like to refer to that example of a cap on people's potential in jobs is that I think the traditional industrial model results in what I kind of call the golden goose school of management.
Okay.
So if you have a golden goose, it produces you one golden egg a week. And if you had one, you'd be obsessed about getting your egg out of that goose every week because it's only going to produce one. It's not
Sure.
going to produce two, and it's not, and if it doesn't produce one, you've missed out for that week, right?
Yes.
And so what we do is we box employees into job specs, and we say to them, give me one egg. And I'm really worried you won't deliver that egg. So I'm now going to manage you to make sure you give me one egg.
Yes.
And the prospect of the potential that they could give you 3 eggs and bonuses and extra potential and help a colleague and become an influencer in the community around your organization is beyond people's understanding. They're just going, you own that job spec owes me one egg. I got to get that out of you. And that's that kind of machine mentality. It's like input equals output, and I can't have anything else because it's a process.
So when people are trying to go out of that box, when they're trying to go live above and beyond and look and not see it as boundaries, but see it as, okay, that's kind of the minimum. What else, what else almost do you want to do? That sounds like it's more driven by purpose. Would you agree with that?
Yeah. I think at the end of the day, the motivation because we all know that stepping out of the box takes risk, right?
Yes.
And it takes, there's a personal risk, there's a personal growth involved in that. You're going to be doing things that you're less comfortable with, that you may be less authorized to do. And so I think people need a driver to do that. and the driver will come from within inside. It will be an urgent sense of, I see that and it prompts me to make change. I see that and I want that to be different. And that will be a sense of purpose. It'll be a welling up of, we can be better than that, and I'll go make it happen.
Right. It almost seems that, and I want to see if you agree with this, that when you're talking about managers and the golden goose here, right? I want that one that managers are or management overall, and I don't want to sound like I'm disparaging management at all, because I think they have a really, really tough job. But to get that, they're putting those motivational factors in place. Instead of it coming from within the person, it's okay, I'm going to give you the incentives, I'm going to give you the policies and procedures that you must follow, and if you don't, you're going to be punished, or maybe I may give you a certificate of achievement, good job, and that becomes the driving factor instead of having it come from each person from within. And I could see, however, on the flip side, that if you just let someone say, all right, what drives you? Great, go do that. You've got chaos. Is that true though?
So I think so. On the second point, you could have chaos, but you'll have chaos if you don't allow people to coordinate amongst themselves. If you don't allow people to come together to share and set common goals to achieve the outcomes, and if you have if people's purpose isn't aligned to the work you're doing, you'll definitely get chaos. Because they'll just go and do what they want to do, which is something different, and you might need different employees, right? Sometimes that's actually a better way of engaging people, is actually to say, hey, look, you're doing something that's not your purpose. Why don't you just go do your purpose, and we'll hire someone whose purpose is more closely aligned to this task, right? There's this kind of mindset which comes from the first part is, look, work is inherently unattractive. So we'd better set some incentive schemes. We'd better set some procedures, rules. We better have measurement and tight management, because work is inherently unattractive and we need our egg from the golden goose. Well, if you believe that, why do people come at all?
Right.
It's odd that often the rules that apply for employees don't apply for managers. And they do have an incredibly tough job, but managers, people recognize, have discretion and flexibility and ability to work in often less rule-bound environments. They're dealing with more complexity. But as our organizations deal with a world that's digital, where change is faster, where people are connected, that level of complexity is getting into every job.
Right.
There is more knowledge management in every job. There is more complexity, there's more change, there's more volatility. I mean, another thing I like to say is the obstacles are the work now. Once upon a time, the process was the work, and you just focused on doing the process. But increasingly, the process, if it runs itself. It's actually the role of people is to focus on the exceptions, the barriers, the problems, the challenges, the times the process doesn't work, or the times the process doesn't change the right outcome. So actually people become the change agents in processes that are working. And then organizations kind of panic, because they're like, oh, I've given you discretion and you need to do that to do your role, but actually now I've now got to bind you with so many rules that you don't do anything that loses us that egg. We need our productivity out of you. And discretion worries us. Rather than going, actually, if I recognize that people can use discretion to realize their potential to further the purposes of the organization, I should actually back that. I should back human potential.
Right. So you were talking earlier about creativity. And I think when we do put those bounds on employees, and it becomes more, like you were saying, mechanized, and follow the process, go ahead and go through this process and come out with a golden egg at the end. But what you're talking about when you said we're managing the obstacles, these obstacles can come out at us from a number of different angles from all over the place, and the obstacles are rarely the same. We may get some that are similar, but they're in different circumstances, so we need to treat them differently, which takes the creativity. But if we're managing in a way that stifles creativity, then we're kind of at an impasse there, aren't we?
Yeah, I've got a famous story of this. So, in
Okay.
my time managing a large, division in a bank, we had a very policy and procedure rich environment. And I had an employee come to me one day and say, "I urgently need a meeting." I'm like, "Okay, great. Let's have a meeting. I'll be out there this afternoon. This is obviously a critical issue." And the issue was, when we sat down to talk with the employee, they said, um, "We need to keep this environment secure. It's a double keyed environment. There's two sets of keys. I don't know who to give my set of keys to when I go on a break. Because if I give it to my deputy, the deputy has two sets of keys. And I've read the policies and procedures in the environment, and I've read everything, and it doesn't tell me what to do with my set of keys."
Oh my.
And this was a very smart, high performing individual. And I said to them, "What do you think you should do?" And they said, "Well, I could give my keys to my deputy's deputy, and then there'd be two people in control of different keys while I'm on my breaks." I said, "What are the, we went through a process of like, what are the risks of that? What are the issues with that?" We checked it all out, and of course it makes sense, right? It's common sense. We need two different people to hold keys to keep the environment secure. And the employee was like, "But am I allowed to do that?" And I'm like, "Yes, we use policy until the policy runs out, and we use common sense when the policy doesn't cover it, and we use creativity to solve problems, because you can't specify the entire environment."
Right.
You look at so many large organizations, particularly process oriented ones, and they attempt to specify the whole environment. It can't be done. So, even when we do that, we still need creativity and potential. We need people to approach a problem and solve it, because the obstacles are the work. That was the fact that I needed to come in and authorize someone to use common sense to solve a problem is a problem in that system.
Yes. And they can go, employees can, when they're in that kind of environment, they can go that route of, I'm at the end of policy. It's kind of like the earth drops off right there. Whew, what do I do? I can't go any further. Or I've also seen them game the system as well, and make it so, oh yeah, you're gonna play this way. Well, I'm gonna figure out a way around this, and then that just blows the whole system out of the water, anyways.
Because what you've done is you've created, I mean, you're inviting gaming, because what you've done is you've created a low trust environment. You've
Right.
said to people, "We don't trust you. We only trust that you can follow the rules in a measurable way. And we will look for compliant behavior, not committed behavior." And so if you're if you look for compliant behavior, you will get compliant behavior. Now, some of it will be compliant and then it stops when the rules stop, and others will be compliant on the surface and devious underneath. But that it's, whereas if what we were talking about before, if you can engage someone's purpose, you get committed behavior. You get people
Yes.
who put in the extra mile, who spend all night thinking about how they can make their job better, because they really want to do a better job for their customers and have a bigger impact in the world. I mean,
Right.
that's the human potential in that is enormous.
But that's a difficult conversation to have. I remember when I was with one client of mine who said, basically his whole thing was, my people don't take initiative and I can't figure out why. So I went in there, and not surprisingly, it was the environment that this president created within his own company, with all the rules and the policies and regulations. People would just stop at that point, or they tried to game it as well. And to go back and say, um, the problem is, I hate to say, you. that's an uncomfortable conversation to have. But how do we approach those who are creating that environment to help them change it to one where we focus instead of the production mentality, we focus on the potential mentality?
So I think, for me, it comes down to an individual who's leading in that way has been taught to lead in that way.
Sure.
They
Yeah.
have seen that work. They're rational. They're kind of like, I get my targets every month because I've got this command and control environment, and I tell everyone exactly what to do, and I drive, and I know what to measure, and I know how to have conversations to achieve the outcomes. So what you need to do with those individuals is show them that there's another way of working, and that actually it'll be uncomfortable at first, but it'll lead to better performance over time. That a different model of working will outperform their current norm. And so, things like a classic example, directive management versus coaching. If you answer every question from your personal expertise and you tell people what they need to do, rather than create a conversation where you and the other individual collaborate to make choices about what the best next step should be. All of a sudden
Mm-hmm.
you're building the capability of your people. You're exploring their potential creativity, their circumstances, their knowledge, their skills. You're growing the combined potential of the two of you. And it's an uncomfortable step to move from, I've always told you the way, to what do you think you should do, as the first question you ask. And what might be the issues with that, and how might we solve that, and moving from supplying answers to asking questions.
Mm-hmm.
Over time, managers realize that's a far more powerful way to lead. That's a far more effective way.
But you're right, it is scary because if you think about it, going back again to your example of the golden egg, you put the rules in place and you get the egg just about every time, right? It's you can count on it. But when you blow that open and say, I want you to be more human, to be creative, and let's see where this goes. Let's see isn't in the performance plan. You know, oddly enough, I for some reason, and I have no idea why this happened, but the other morning I woke up and I was dreaming about work, of course, and the phrase went through my head: "Hope is not a strategy," and we've all heard that. But the as I was waking up, right in that time between awake and asleep, when you're an absolute genius, those times, um, the phrase read up. So hope is not a strategy, and then the answer was, but faith is. And that's almost what you're talking about here. Is you need to have the faith in the employees to allow them to reach that potential, so that you can have more overall, rather than managing the golden egg.
Yeah, and I'm a big believer of you got to have faith, because what we're really talking about is moving managers off a localized maximum, so they're going to have to go down. So they need faith, right? Because they're actually going to go down off the
Right.
peak, but
Yep.
they're going to come up a new peak that's even
Yes.
higher. And so faith's an important part of that. The other important part of it is experimentation. Short
Yeah.
cycle, real time, continuous experimentation. Because hope is not a strategy, but experimentation is. Learning together with your people how we get up that new maximum. And that, for me, is the critical transformation that happens. Because the interesting thing about this model Golden Goose School of Management we've got is it's largely set and forget.
Sure.
I'll set you a performance plan on the first day of the financial year, and I'll talk to you on the last day of the financial year about how it gone, unless you're evidently off target mid-year, in which point I'll shout at you, right?
Yep.
So it's very much a set and forget. Whereas what we know about realizing people's potential is short cycles, learning together, experimenting, trying new things, developing ways together of working better, that's a strategy. That's the outperforming strategy in the modern digital world. So what we're actually asking management to do is get off their high horse with their policy book and get down in the trenches and actually, outperform by changing the way people work and working and experimenting in short cycles.
You put that so succinctly. That was perfect because I hear a lot of people talk about, again, back to the phrase, hope is not a strategy, but then trying to come up with hope is not a strategy, but coming up with something alternative, that trying to articulate that is difficult. And I think if the listeners took exactly what you said and started playing by that playbook, I think they'll find huge return in in what they're doing compared to what they're doing right now.
And I think what it challenges you to do, which is something that we're not very comfortable to do in organizations, is to create an ongoing dialogue in our teams about how the team could perform
Yes.
in a different way.
Right.
How the
Yes.
team could work differently and how we might achieve performance by working in radically different ways and asking the team to actually lead that transformation.
Right.
And that's a very different model of work. And it's one that will draw your people into being very deeply invested in the goals and performance of the team in a way that, the traditional management model cannot achieve. It can only put incentives on the table and put fear behind carrots and sticks. That's all the old models got.
Yeah. Right. And to that point, I just started up a weekly video, and they're only about 2 minutes each, and it does exactly what you just said. At least the intent is for a team to take those and watch it at the beginning of their weekly or biweekly or monthly meeting or whatever, just 2 minutes, and then talk about it for 10 or 15 minutes and just get the conversation going. Whereas normally you get in a team meeting like this and it's very structured and you got to hit the main points, and which is good. You got to do that, but there's no time for that creativity. There's no time for just opening up and saying, you know what, this is kind of crazy. Why are we doing it this way? Why don't we? What other ways could we do it? And start bringing that out in the employees.
Yeah, I mean, I remember one of the best, most creative projects I was involved in when I was working at the bank. We specifically put aside a weekly meeting for problem solving, and we
Very
had
good.
the whole team together for a weekly meeting for problem solving. Not surprisingly, very rarely were we solving problems. Mostly we were solving the process that created the problem. So we pretty quickly got into, actually, we're not working in the best possible way because, there's a shortage of analysts on this project and they're being chopped and changed. Why don't we change the way we're managing the analyst pool to better deliver tangible pieces of work so everyone feels like they have a sense of achievement on what they've done. And that way we'll get better productivity and we'll get more done. And, so we started this fantastic conversation, which often began with, I can't get an analyst to do my work. And then we'd suddenly ask the why question. Well, how come everyone can't get an analyst to do their work? We're probably working in the wrong way.
Yes.
And over a period of 6 months, our project went from a very traditional structured project using project management disciplines to using those same disciplines, but in a far more agile, learning, self-working, independent orientation way, because we'd pulled apart the pieces of the process that were broken for us with our challenge. And we'd invented new models and approaches to taking that forward.
That's a great example. Love that. Thank you. That's good. Now, in wrapping up, if you would give the listeners a challenge that they can do to make work more human for themselves and for their team and for the whole company, for that matter.
So for me, the great challenge is to go back to your organization and start a conversation with the people you work with about what defines when your team and your individuals are at their best? What is it that really says, I know I'm delivering my best when I? Because what comes out of those conversations are clues to two things. One, it's a clue to personal purpose, because the things you do when you're at your best, when you're in that sense of flow, when things are just going well for you and you're really blowing away the potential, they're just awesome, guides to what you really want to be doing. But secondly, you're going to find things that one person in their team's doing that creates their best, that everyone can share. And that conversation, creating that creative, human, collaborative conversation where people share what makes them exceptional performers, is a fabulous way to start. And it's the opposite of our usual conversation, which is what's going wrong.
Right.
And I think there's real potential if you focus on the upside.
That's a great idea. Yeah, it's a totally different mentality that we need to take at when we're managing our teams. In fact, I would even argue that at that point, when you're doing that, you're no longer managing your teams, but you're letting your teams almost free to do what do their best. And you can, I don't want to say you can just sit back and say, wow, but a lot of it is you can kind of take a step back and just be amazed at what they're able to do.
So I think this is the moment that traditional golden goose manager never gets to see. They never get to see that moment when they thought the team was capable of X, and the team goes away and brings back 3X, and just blows you away with ideas that are better than the ideas you could ever have had. With work that's done faster at a higher quality, and they've stretched themselves to deliver more impact for their customers and stakeholders than anyone could ever have done. And for me, that's the potential we're after. That's when work really truly is human, when human potential and human creativity are stretching what's possible.
Perfect. Love that. You explained that so well. Thank you so much for taking the time to explain all this to us and give us some great examples that we can all use. Thank you.
Thanks, Kevin. It's been great to chat.